What is going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic that a lot of people ask about. We're going to be talking about what is better for you and your damage dealing champions, attack or crit damage. I get this question all of the time, and from my experience, it seems to be leaning towards people not valuing attack high enough. So what I want to do is I want to start off with a question to all of you. If I give you something like 300% crit damage, and I said 300% crit damage is a lot of crit damage, what would be the equivalent of attack to that number? So take a moment, think about it. Based on what you think about the game, what is your equivalent to 300% crit damage as far as attack goes? So what I want to tell you, and the number that's associated with 300%, just to kind of let you gauge on what a lot of attack is compared to a lot of crit damage, is going to be 7,000 attack. So think about what you thought in your head when I asked you this question compared to what I just told you was 7,000. Were you close? Were you far? That's kind of going to gauge on how you're actually valuing attack over crit damage, and that's one step what's going to help you. We're going to get very specific, and there's going to be a formula I'm going to give you, and I do want to give a huge shout out to HG Senti, who kind of laid things out perfectly for me so I could explain it and everyone would fully understand how to make this work for their account. As much as I would love to give you a threshold and say always hit these numbers, it's not going to be realistic from an account to account basis because everyone's account is different. Everyone has different gear they can play with. So what it's going to come down to is how you build your champions and being able to look at upgrades and actually input something into a calculator to give you the value of what's going to be good and what's going to be bad for you. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over an example using Enithwi Blood Twin. He's a great champion. He has a black revive, but what he does isn't important. Let's take a look at his stats here. We have 5,285 attack. We have 264% crit damage. So the question is going to be, if I said, I want to change his gear around, but I'm not sure if it's an upgrade. So this is what we're going to do. And this is kind of the process on what I would recommend if you did want to do this to your account. So let's say I want to use the current boots here, and let me slide myself over so you all can see the exact stats that I am talking about here. We have these boots, and what it's going to do is it's going to reduce the attack by 86, but it's going to increase my crit damage by 3%. So the question is going to be, is this worth it or is it not worth it? So this is the part where you're probably going to want to either write something down, take a note on how this whole process works. So if you remember, the stats I showed you were 5,285 attack compared to 264 crit damage. So what can you do? What you're going to do is you're going to consider 1,000 attack as the number 1 and 100% crit damage as the number 1. So what this is going to come down to is it's going to be 5.285, which is converted from 5,285 attack. You're going to multiply that by 2.64, which is going to be 264 crit damage. However, there is a multiplier for crit damage to make this work. You also have to add an additional 100% crit damage to this. So anytime you are using this formula, you have to add an additional 100% crit damage based on how the breakdown works and the mathematics works in this game, and I will show you the super complex way and place where I actually found this out. So what it's going to come down to is you are going to get 5.285 multiplied by 3.64, which is going to equal 19.2374. So the question is going to be, what does this number mean? This is the number that is going to evaluate your champion and give you a starting point what your champion's worth. So now let's go back and think about once again the boots that I was considering putting on this champion. This was going to reduce Enithwi's attack to 5,199, but it was going to increase his crit damage to 267%. So the multiplication I'm going to do here is 5.199 multiplied by 3.67. Is even though once again it was 267, you have to add that 100% crit damage to make this formula work. So what you're going to get here is 19.08033. So from what you can tell already, 86 attack is actually valued much higher. And I say much higher even though it's just 0.12, but when you think of the scale of things, it is much higher than 3% crit damage. However, this is going to be very different based on all of your champions. One thing you're never going to do is try to calculate an aura with this, an attack up with this, increase crit damage. Forget about any external buff that's going to be added onto this champion when you're doing this calculation. This is going to let you as the player do this simple formula every time you're considering, is this attack and this crit damage better than this attack and this crit damage? Am I too low here? Am I too high here? This kind of gives you the rundown on this formula so you can make a better decision for yourself as the player to know really which one is better for you when you're looking at an upgrade. So now what this is going to do is this is going to come back to the original question, where did I get this formula from? Now HG Senti did break this down for me, but the place that it's found is super complex. You pretty much need a supercomputer to do this. This is big brain stuff here. And on top of that, wouldn't it be amazing if I actually told you that you look at this formula right in front of you at least one time a day? So where is this formula exactly? Every time you hit this I here for total stats, you get abbreviations here. Now, most people head straight to the tab called total stats here. However, if we take a step back and we go back to abbreviation and we look at critical damage, defines the amount of additional damage dealt by critical hits on top of a skill's base damage. 150 crit damage means a critical hit will deal 250% damage, 100% base damage plus 100% crit damage. So this is why we are adding that 100% crit damage, which adds one additional point to that equation that I did show you before on how to calculate all of these things together. So now that you have that, if you really don't want to do this much math, I can kind of give you my guesstimate on how you should gear champions. Like I said before, we kind of did the breakdown with 7,000 attack with something like 300% crit damage. That's considered a lot for sure. As we can see in my Hegemon here, you don't really want to build Hegemon or where I'm using Hegemon with 100% crit. You want to keep them around 50 to 75%. So with this, I was able to hit 7,000 attack and 310% crit damage in Savage and Cruel gear. However, the question is going to be, if you are building a nuke champion for the arena for wave clear, where should you kind of look for as a focal point for the type of stats you're looking for? So let's say you have a champion with 260% crit damage. I would highly recommend you even things out and get that champion 5,000 attack or as close to that as possible. Now, outside of 260% crit damage, if you are, let's say, running 200% crit damage, you're not quite at that end game stage. You're either mid game or late game with 200% crit damage. What should you be looking for with attack? I would say at least 3,000, 3,500. Definitely use those as your minimums and don't go too much lower than that. I've seen a lot of people running 2,000 attack, 2,500 attack with something like 210, 220% crit damage, and they're absolutely killing themselves. If they add 200 attack, 300 attack, or the recommended 1,000 attack on top of that, their damage is going to skyrocket because they're not respecting how much attack actually does for you. Now, whilst this may seem a little bit confusing for some people, all you have to do is kind of look at the base formula that I gave you, how you're multiplying things, and then think about it in your head on how both of these numbers directly impact each other based on what the numbers say. All you have to do is look at the relativity between the two numbers, and you could even do some mental math when just looking at someone's base attack, saying, okay, this times this. You don't have to be really specific. You can get a roundabout without using a calculator of what the damage should actually look like, and you should be able to compare that rather quickly as time goes on. Now, one very important thing that I'm not considering here is something like Savage gear, Cruel gear, Helm Smasher. All of these things definitely do make a difference when considering a build. Sometimes you can go lower on the attack and crit damage together. However, the formula is still going to stay relative to your champion. I will definitely do a video on the difference between Savage gear, the difference between Cruel gear, what stats you should be looking for if you're aiming to use both of those sets. Once again, I'm definitely going to credit HG Senti. He has awesome charts on Savage and Cruel, so I'm excited to get that video out to you guys as well, because that's definitely an important topic as well. I've seen lots of people kind of misbuilding Savage and Cruel sets. They think they need ridiculous stats. However, the ignore alone, based on the information you can kind of take away from where you're actually using these sets, will help a lot of people. So definitely look for that video in the coming days going forward. And hopefully this kind of opened a few people's eyes as far as the difference between attack and crit damage and how it can help you overall. Alright guys, that is going to conclude my video today for this topic of attack versus crit damage. Let me know what you guys think. Were you guys overvaluing attack, overvaluing crit damage? Give me your feedback, and don't forget, if you enjoy this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.